I'd like to thank Dr. Eric Fredrickson for that very kind introduction. I feel exactly the same way about him. He's a wonderful colleague and friend, and privileged to serve with him on the OLC board, and really delighted to be here at the University of Rochester. I will tell you, I've never been to Rochester, so this is my first trip to the city, and obviously my first trip to the University of Rochester. So Eric very kindly took me on a nice little tour this morning. It's a beautiful day. What a beautiful, sprawling campus. I mean, I'm just so impressed with what I've seen here. And again, very happy to join you today. Thank you for coming. I am from St. John's University. I'm not a native New Yorker, by the way. I grew up in Pennsylvania and went to college in Pennsylvania and then relocated to where I presently live in Long Island, New York. But I work at St. John's University. How many of you familiar? A few, right? A little bit familiar? You've heard about the basketball team, maybe? Right? Basketball? Yeah. That's another whole story. I have to charge extra for that one. But St. John's University, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that today. And obviously, to speak about what we're doing with online learning at St. John's, that's really the core of what I'm here for. But I'd really love, and I know you're eating, so I won't make you talk right now. But by show of hands, how many of you are currently teaching online? Currently teaching online. Okay, that's not a bad number. How many of you are considering perhaps teaching online? Note, we're not taking notes or names. Okay, so some of you are considering it. That's good. And how many of you are administrators, non-teaching sort of personnel? Anybody here? Okay.
Well, I'm both.
Both? Okay, okay. We wear a lot of hats sometimes, right? Understood. Okay, so we've got a really good, and I know we have some graduate students here as well, right? Who are our graduate students? Thank you for coming. It's great to have you here too. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, and then we'll launch into it. I do have a presentation prepared, but I do invite you to ask if you have a burning question, and it just can't wait until the end when we do Q&A. Feel free to jump in and ask or comment. It's meant to be more of a conversation than anything else. So this is what I planned. We'll see if we can get through all of it. I will talk about the St. John's University organization and mission, which is fairly unique, and something that's deeply related to that, which is the strategic priorities of our institution and how online learning fits into our institutional priorities. The history and programs and online learning initiatives at St. John's, historical and currently underway. I will definitely touch on professional development for faculty who are teaching online. I oversee that unit, and it's very near and dear to my heart, professional development for faculty. Talk a little bit about student and faculty feedback and what is on the horizon for St. John's University relative to online learning. So that's my planned agenda. All right. Tell you a little bit about St. John's first. St. John's is a fairly large university. We are located in Jamaica, Queens, in the borough of Queens in New York City. So we are an urban institution, but we're not unlike this campus, very green, very beautiful, like an oasis in the middle of, that somebody plopped in the middle of Queens, New York. It's a great place. We were founded nearly 150 years ago in Brooklyn, New York, by the Vincentian community of the Catholic Church. We are a Catholic institution, faith-based institution. We were founded primarily to serve the children of immigrants to New York City, especially those in need. So that is very much part of the Vincentian tradition. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We are a private, nonprofit, research, doctoral, professional, dominant. If you're into Carnegie classifications, you know what that means. That is our classification under Carnegie. I think of St. John's not as a research-intensive university, unlike University of Rochester. We are a teaching institution. That is what we're really about. Research is important, however. We have 7 campus locations at St. John's. The main campus, our big residential campus, is the Queens campus. We have campuses in Manhattan, Staten Island. We have a small campus out in Long Island in Hauppauge, New York. We have campuses in Rome, Paris, and Limerick, Ireland. So big institution, spread out around the world, and a very rich history. We have academic units including a College of Pharmacy and Health Science, Collins College of Professional Studies, our School of Liberal Arts and Sciences, our College of Business, School of Education, and a law school. Okay, so those are the academic divisions at St. John's. 1,471 faculty, according to the latest count, which I think was last fall. More than 21,000 students at St. John's. The vast majority of them are undergraduate students. And as I started this conversation, we are part of the Big East Conference. We have 17 NCAA Division I sports teams, and sports are a big deal at St. John's. Okay, so that's kind of the general overview of our institution. Now, the mission and values of St. John's are something that I really felt I had to touch on today because they perfuse everything that we do at St. John's. We are a Catholic, Vincentian, metropolitan, and global university. This is part of our mission statement. As I mentioned earlier, we were founded in 1870 in Brooklyn, New York, at the request of one of the Catholic bishops in Brooklyn, John Laughlin, to serve the youth of New York City and the children of immigrants specifically. So this extends the vision of St. Vincent de Paul. If you're familiar with Catholic doctrine, you may have heard of him. He was a 17th century French priest. And this university was built with his values and his vision at the heart of everything that it does. We direct all of our resources of faith and knowledge to combat social injustice. So social justice issues are very, very critical to St. John's, and we are constantly looking at online learning and its place in that whole sort of landscape of how to serve these students in need. Okay, so that's the story. I'm giving you an org chart here that I'm guessing you can't see very well from the back, and you don't need to. This is just to give you an idea of how we are organized at the senior level of administration and how online learning fits into that landscape. So at the top of the chart here, you see the provost and vice president for academic affairs. That's my boss. And he has a fairly large number of direct reports. If you start on the left side of the chart, he oversees all the deans of the various academic units that I just mentioned, okay, and there are 7 of them, plus a vice provost at our Staten Island campus, which is more of an operational office, and University Libraries is also one of those deans. And then next to that, the vice president for student affairs reports up through our provost. Our chief enrollment officer reports up through our provost. Vice provost for academic support services and faculty development. The vice provost for digital learning, that's yours truly. I'm in the center of the chart, selfishly. Not really, but that's where I put myself when I made the chart. An associate provost for administration and accreditation, that's our chief accreditation officer. We have an associate provost for global programs, an associate provost for academic resources and planning, that's our finance person, right? And then the director of institutional research. So that covers a lot of territory at the university. Our provost is a very, very busy individual with a great number of very important responsibilities. I'm just one of those, smaller boxes down below. So the point that I wanted to make with this slide was to tell you that my position was created 5 years ago. It's a new position at St. John's. I'm the first person to occupy the position, which is something that I feel very pleased and honored to do. And underneath the vice provost position, there's an office for online learning and services. So this is a central service unit. It was created before I arrived. There was an associate provost who was doing sort of a part-time gig as the director of that unit. And then he decided to move on. They decided to create a new position. And I came in and basically restructured that office because the one thing that we didn't have at St. John's that I felt we desperately needed was an instructional design team. So all of the new hires in online learning and services that I was able to make, and I was able to make 4 of them, there are 3 instructional designers and there's a media specialist that does media production. And we serve the entire university, so this is a small but mighty operation, right? So we report up through the provost, and as does our Center for Teaching and Learning. Okay, our Center for Teaching and Learning reports up through academic support and faculty development services, and I do a lot of work with the Center for Teaching and Learning. We collaborate a lot on providing professional development to our faculty in a variety of areas, but Obviously, my area is online learning and services. So that's how it looks here. The other thing I wanted to mention about the structure, which has a real impact on how we operate, is information technology reports up through a different officer, not through the provost. And academic technology is part of that group. So that's another area of the institution with which I interface quite a bit. I mean, everything that we do depends on academic technology, so that's a really important relationship, and we work very closely with them. Any questions so far? Following?
That Center for Teaching and Learning is for all of the schools?
This is for the entire university. It's a central, it's not a, well, it is now. We actually have a new space that was built for the Center for Teaching and Learning within the last 2 years. Before that, it was just a very small office, and it was more of a concept than an actual operation. But now we have a physical location. We have a very, very small staff there. They don't really do their own programming. All of the programming that we do at CTL at St. John's is delivered by St. John's faculty. It's peer-to-peer kind of instruction. But now that online learning exists in its current form, we also deliver our offerings through the CTL. University Libraries delivers professional development through the CTL. There's a lot of partnership and collaboration with CTL. It's an important unit. Anybody else? Okay. So that's the lay of the land, right? Online learning at St. John's. So online learning didn't start when I arrived. We've been doing online coursework at St. John's for nearly 25 years. And it's grown very organically, I would say, at St. John's University. It grew out of faculty interest and student interest in providing, some flexible and convenient formatting for students to take courses. And the first pioneering faculty that delivered these courses didn't have a lot of support and help or resources with which to work. But nevertheless, they forged ahead. Our first online course was officially offered in 1995, and as you go down, the arrow here, you'll see that we adopted a distance learning policy in 2002. We do have a formal distance learning policy. It's quite old now. I think it's time for a refresh on that, by the way. I need to get on that when I get home. Yeah, that's an old policy, but one of the great things about that policy, which I was delighted to see when I arrived, was that we do require our faculty to be certified to teach online before they are assigned an online course at St. John's. And so that has made my job of professional development a bit easier, I'll say. By the way, we also have a unionized faculty at St. John's. Did I mention that? We do. Unionized faculty. Okay, so the distance learning policy, our first online program was a graduate program in 2003. It was our Master's in Library and Information Science. Why did we start with that program? Any guesses? Any guesses? The discipline as a whole moved into online learning pretty early on in the game. And there was a lot of competitive, pressure to start to move in that direction in library and information science at the time. Coincidentally, the person who ran the online learning office was the program director for library science as well. So I think that had something to do with it. So that was back in 2003, small program, by the way. We did our first online associate's degree. We do some associate's degrees at St. John's. The following year, 2004, online bachelor's degree, 2005. There was stuff going on between 2005 and 2014, but 2014 is when I arrived on the scene, so I gave myself a dot there in 2014, and that's when we hired our instructional design team. And we delivered our first online doctoral degree 2 years ago. It's a PhD in literacy in our School of Education, fully online. There are not many of those. If you Google it, you won't find too many of them. So we've done actually very well with that program. There's been a high demand for it. It was a heavy lift, though, to get a fully online doctoral degree up and running. We now have two. We added recently a Doctor of Professional Studies in Homeland Security. That's through our College of Professional Studies. So moving right along to, yes?
What's your bachelor's degree in?
The online bachelor's degrees?
Yeah.
We don't currently run them. We discontinued admission to the undergraduate online programs at St. John's about 3 years ago. We just weren't attracting students. There's
Is it in a certain subject area?
Yes. So we had one in liberal studies, we had one in criminal justice, and we had one in business. It was like a business administration type of degree, general business. And it was run out of our college. These were all run out of our College of Professional Studies, right? Because of enrollment issues, the new dean decided we're not going to admit to these programs at this time. We have to revisit what we're doing at the undergraduate level with online learning. So that was a good question. I'm glad you asked it. Any others? Okay, so that's the history. Now, let's talk about current situation at St. John's. When I arrived in 2014, a new president arrived 3 months after I did. And some of the discussions that we'd had around my hire and the plans that we had for online learning development changed as a result of a new administration, which is good, that's fine. But one of the things that he very quickly did, our new president, was to implement these 4 new strategic priorities for the organization, for the institution. And they're very simple and straightforward, deliberately so. And everybody at St. John, you could stop anybody at St. John's on the sidewalk and say, what are the 4 strategic priorities of St. John's University? And they will be able to answer that question. They have been well socialized. So the first one is to ensure student success. The second one is to recruit, recognize, and retain the best faculty, staff, and administration. So these first 2 strategic priorities are focused on our students, focused on our faculty, and admin, and staff community. The second 2 are a bit different. Number 3 is to enhance the teaching and learning environment. That's where I spend a lot of my time, right, in my role. And the 4th is to expand global and community partnerships. So we don't have a conventional strategic plan at St. John's University. We have strategic priorities that we visit and review every single year at a president's retreat. And we have a lot of action items underneath each one of these priorities. And we review this on an annual basis, and we assess it, and we look at our progress, and we look to see where we need to shift gears as conditions change in the world and in our programs and so on. So these are the strategic priorities under which I now operate in terms of what we do with online learning. So again, another slide that you can't read, and you don't need to. I will leave this with you, by the way, if you're interested. But so we have student success at the top, and my organization, Online Learning and Services, is really more of a faculty-facing organization. We don't work directly with students. We don't recruit them. We don't serve them. We don't work on retention or any of those sorts of things. All of our online programs are delivered by the academic units, and they are under the purview of the academic units. It's very decentralized, right? Very decentralized. But we are a central support service. Now, because it's such a priority at St. John's, we are constantly looking for ways to participate in promoting student success. So, for example, one of the things that we're working on now is a new student orientation process, a student orientation to online learning. I have an instructional design team that can build such an experience. And so if we have the capacity to do that, we do that because it's a priority for the institution. So that's one of the things that we're working on. Another is looking at ways in which we can contribute to student retention and satisfaction, specifically in online courses and programs. So that is, these 2 things that I just mentioned are very much front and center this academic year for my unit. And I won't go into all the detail on them, but these are things that we're working on now. Then we go down through the other strategic priorities. I'm not going to list off all of these things for you. I'll leave you with the slides, and you can read them if you're interested. But we spend most of our time here enhancing the teaching and learning environment. That's a big one for us. That's where all of our professional development resides. That's where we're looking at developing and delivering high-quality online courses and programs that meet Quality Matters standards. Quality Matters is a nationally normed rubric that sets out, and I don't know how many items are on that survey, do you? 43 items on this rubric. So, quality standards in online learning. We haven't adopted it wholesale at St. John's, but we use a number of these standards in the process of designing and developing online courses. So we're very focused on quality. Creating digital content and helping faculty to learn how to integrate media into their online courses, which of course enhances student engagement, satisfaction. It's all related, right? You can't really separate these things so neatly, but certainly, and we have a person who's dedicated to that, on our team. And then, of course, identifying and discussing best practices with our faculty, bringing them into professional development events and activities to help them understand, what's industry standard, what does quality look like, that sort of thing. So enhancing the teaching and learning environment, very, very important. And it's my role as the Vice Provost to advocate for the tools and the resources that we need to get this job done. And I spend a lot of time on that. Expanding global and community partnerships. Now, this is an interesting one. We just are wrapping up an initiative that we undertook with our Office of Global Programs. They asked us if we could help them to develop a professional development learning module to assist faculty in creating global learning experiences within their courses. Because global is very important at St. John's. And not all of our students are able to go and study abroad, for example. A high number of them do. About 48%, I think, of our undergraduates study abroad, which is pretty high. But not every student will have that opportunity. How can we provide those opportunities online? What can we do online? So we worked with the Office of Global Programs, and we developed this module. One of our instructional designers worked with their 3 faculty members at St. John's to create this experience. And we're rolling it out for the first time this semester. So I'm very proud of that because it's not normally in our wheelhouse, but it was something that we were asked to do, we had the capacity to do, and we were able to deliver that. So we're very eager to see how that goes. So these are just some examples of the kinds of priorities that we've set for the current year. Okay. I mentioned a few of these things before, but I just wanted to run down the list very quickly with you of what we currently offer online at St. John's. Our registered programs, the programs that are registered with the state of New York, we have the 2 doctoral programs that I mentioned earlier, Homeland Security and Literacy, PhD. We have about 11 master's degree programs. A lot of them are in our School of Education, as a matter of fact, school leadership. We don't have curriculum instruction online yet. I hope we will soon. Instructional and administrative leadership, and just a bunch of different master's programs out of the School of Education, and related graduate level certificate programs. And then, the student population it's interesting because we have a fairly good number of programs here on the list, but our fully online student population is modest, not quite 500 students who study fully online at St. John's out of the 21,000+ student body, right? So it's a small footprint. Online courses, very different story, very different story. In spring 2019, which is the last real good data that I have, we enrolled 6,200 students. Now, these are duplicated numbers, so we could have had one student taking more than one, right, online course. 6,200 student enrollments at the undergraduate level, more than 260 course sections, undergrad. We are a residential campus. We know that we have students sitting in our dormitories taking our online courses. It happens, right? It happens. And it happens because they need the flexibility, they need the time, they need the convenience of not having to physically appear on the campus. We have a high number of commuting students at St. John's as well. And let me tell you from personal experience, the commute into Queens is not fun. Not fun. It's a great place, but the commute is not part of that great experience. So undergraduates certainly have shown an increasing demand. If we look at the demand curve over time, it just keeps going up and up and up. At the graduate level, there is demand for sure. Most of our graduate programs, when they're offered online, they have a face-to-face counterpart as well. So students have the option of sort of going back and forth between online and face-to-face courses. About 2,500 student enrollments in the spring of 2019, and about 200 course sections. So that is also on an upswing at St. John's. So here's another interesting little factoid that I didn't put on the slide, but I have it committed to memory. We offer more than 200,000 credits at St. John's every year. And of those 200,000 plus credits, about 10% of them are fully online. So that gives you an idea of how much online learning we're doing. In the overall scheme of things, it's not a huge slice of the pie, but it's a continually growing slice of the pie. It went from 6% to 8% to 10%. Let's see what happens next year. Questions? Yes?
You mentioned the graduate level courses that are both in person and online.
Yes.
Can you talk about the difference in the experience?
Sure. Well,
For the same course, the same content.
it is. These programs, by and large, were built as face-to-face programs, traditional, on-campus programs, and for various reasons decided to offer an online format. So we had to transition from that format to online, with the idea that these are the very same courses in terms of learning outcomes and objectives and content. It's the same experience delivered differently. So we do most of our online delivery in an asynchronous format. We do offer synchronous tools, but most of our online coursework is done asynchronously. So, it's essentially the same faculty as well. Most of our online courses are delivered by full-time faculty at St. John's. We do have adjunct faculty that participate, but mostly full-time. So it's the same faculty member who's teaching a section here or a section there in a lot of the cases. Does that answer your question? Okay, you're welcome. Anybody else? Okay.
Liz, you talked about synchronous and asynchronous. Is your synchronous constant, or do you feel like there's been growth in synchronous, adding synchronous at least components?
Yeah, I think there has been. I do see it as a growth area. I think that I see it at the individual course level and also at the program level. So for example, we have an online MBA program. I'm just taking this as one example. We have an online MBA program late to the market. Everybody else had an online MBA a long time ago, but ours just came to the market within the last couple of years. And a lot of fully online programs like business programs are starting to implement a requirement for an in-person orientation or intensive at the beginning of the program, maybe somewhere in the middle, somewhere at the end. And so at the program level, we see that happening, and it's in person, not just synchronous, it's face-to-face. The synchronous components that you're talking about online, we've had a lot more faculty interested in using web conferencing, WebEx tools and things like that. That's the tool that we use at St. John's. You may have others that you use here. So yeah, I would say that we don't encourage people to require synchronous components necessarily at a program level. There are trade-offs to that, as you well know. If you attract a national audience to a program or an international audience to an online program, and you have required synchronous sessions, you're limiting your audience, right? You're going across time zones. It creates all sorts of things. But at a course level, and we primarily serve our New York metro region, a lot of people are using synchronous tools.
Yeah. I have a question. You had said you offer face-to-face and online, and they can flip back and forth. Do you mean within the same semester they can flip between your live and your online, or no? So your online students are online,
yes,
and your face-to-face.
Yes. So if we have a program, I'll use our graduate accounting program as an example. We have a graduate accounting program. It's offered face-to-face. It's offered fully online. Students must make a decision as to which pathway they're going to take. But the thing is, they can actually take a few courses in a different format if it turns out that they need to. We don't prevent them from doing that.
Right. In other words, they could take 2 courses face-to-face and 1 online if they're trying to resolve a schedule.
Correct. Yes.
Just
Yes.
to follow up to that one, so there's no courses that are a blended or a hybrid class?
Yeah, we have those too.
You do?
Yes, we do. I'm not focusing on them today, but I'm glad you asked because we do. And I actually have taught a few of those at St. John's myself. I teach in our EDD program in Instructional Administrative Leadership in the School of Education, and I love teaching in all these different formats. They're great. We don't do as many hybrid courses as we do fully online. And I would venture to say, in my personal opinion, it's harder to do hybrid courses well than it is to just do them fully online or fully face-to-face. That's been my personal experience. Some of you might, I see some people nodding. Yeah, it's not always easy to do it in that way. but we do. Anything else? We probably have a lot of hybrid programs at St. John's, and we haven't even identified them as such necessarily, right? Because students do have these options now. Okay, so on the technical side of things, you know, I'm just going to give you a smattering of some of the tools that we've adopted, that we use at St. John's. Obviously, the learning management system is critical. We are a Blackboard school. We are currently in Blackboard Learn. We are transitioning to Blackboard Ultra. Anybody know about Blackboard here? What's your, is that your, okay. So everybody knows about Blackboard. Yeah, so we're making the transition to Ultra. Have you done that? No, not yet? Okay. I'm not going to talk about it.
Is it that bad?
No, I'm not going to talk about it. But you know, with Blackboard, obviously, you can integrate. There are a lot of tools that are native to Blackboard, but also a lot of tools that can be integrated with Blackboard. It's fairly flexible in that way. You can do asynchronous and synchronous instruction using tools in Blackboard. And the web conferencing tool that we use, as I mentioned earlier, is WebEx. That's the one that we support. We are also seeing an increasing interest on the part of our faculty, and certainly it's been a push through our IT colleagues, to design for mobile devices, right? So that students can participate wherever they are at any time on pretty much any device. And a high number of students come to St. John's in possession of a mobile device, whether it's a phone or a tablet. We also have a laptop program at St. John's. Every student at St. John's entering as a freshman gets a laptop. There's a fee built in, but everybody has a laptop. So that is something that we're seeing some growing interest in, and certainly something to keep an eye on, I think, for the future, if you're not already involved with that. The integration of social media platforms, very interesting. I find a lot of faculty are interested in using social media in their courses, especially with their undergraduates. It's something that, you know, these are platforms that are familiar to students. They use them all the time. You know, finding ways to integrate them into the curriculum and into delivery is something that I think is very powerful. So we do that. These are I don't even know what they all are. I mean, if you could name every one of those platforms, no, there's no prize at the end or anything, but some of them probably look familiar, some of them may not, right? Digital multimedia and courseware, a lot of our faculty, this is a little bit more discipline specific, I would say. A lot of our faculty are integrating digital courseware into their curriculum and using these tools extensively. I don't necessarily have data on that because it's sort of up to the individual faculty who adopt to do that, and using major publishing companies' software. And then, of course, file sharing, and we've got a variety of tools for that. So I think we've got a fairly, and I don't even have everything up here. I feel like we have a pretty good set of resources for online learning on the technology side at St. John's. I think we're very fortunate to be able to use all these tools, and they're fairly well supported as well. Okay, going through this quickly. So when Eric and I talked about this discussion today, we talked about some of the more general sort of initiatives that are underway at St. John's. I think I've given you a flavor for what, the purpose that online learning serves at St. John's and its place sort of in the ecosystem of learning at St. John's. It's a small slice of the pie, but a growing one, right? In the individual academic units, there's some interesting initiatives underway as well. For example, our law school makes extensive use of lecture capture technology. Law students go to a lot of lectures, right? A lot of lectures. And the law school decided to do lecture capture for all of its, lecture courses, and to make those lectures available after class so that it's a supplemental resource for students that are taking these courses. It's very popular, apparently, and they're doing well with it. Law school I don't know a lot about, actually, because they function fairly autonomously at St. John's. We don't interact as much with them as I would like, but we're working on that. I think part of the reason is because there's so many restrictions on legal education JD degrees. There's only a certain percentage that can be offered online according to all these different organizations. I don't even know all of them, but it's changing. The landscape is changing with law education, so we'll keep an eye on that. OER, Open Educational Resources. Anybody using them? You are using them? Good. What do you teach, if you don't mind my asking?
Professional development for math teachers.
Okay. Okay, so you're using OER. What, if I may ask, what prompted you to do that?
No, I'm personally use them like Merlot and some of those.
Ah, okay, I see. So not in the curriculum necessarily, but just you're familiar and you're using the tools. Okay. Yeah, so open educational resources, I won't spend a lot of time on it. It's not something that we're doing a lot of right now at St. John's, but this is an area of intense interest. An area of intense interest. In fact, I just attended a demo from a vendor yesterday. It was for the university libraries. They provide a system, an administrative back-end system that integrates all of the library collections in addition to all the OER collections, you know, that are out there for students. And it's especially interesting to me for online courses because it really just literally puts all of the course readings, materials, everything that you need for a course at the click of a button. It's an amazing resource. Keep your eyes and ears open relative to OER. Yes?
On that one,
Yes.
is part of that idea to think about a strategy with OER to avoid textbook purchases by students? Is that a driver for that?
It is, and it comes back to our Vincentian mission and the people that we serve, right? So we serve a very high number of Pell-eligible students, students who come from, you know, very modest financial means. And so money is an issue. It's always an issue for our students. And how can we help them to address that? And I think OER is one of those strategies. So that is one of our motivations and one of the reasons we're talking about this very intensely right now, to make these resources available to our students, to reduce the cost of textbooks. Yes. Anybody else? Okay. Another area of interest, and this is not specific to one academic unit, it's more of a university-wide discussion, is around the notion of micro-credentials related to stackable credentials. So the idea that, you know, we're a very traditional university. We're offering associate's degrees, bachelor's, master's, PhDs, and EDDs, and certificates here and there, right? Certificates here and there. But we're really interested in looking at micro-credentials, these smaller, you know, certificate programs, if you want to call them that, or programs or units or modules that for which we can create digital badges. And then some of these might be offered for credit, some of them might be offered as non-credit offerings, but the idea is that students can come in, they can take a set of learning experiences, we'll call them modules for argument's sake, and then get a credential for that outside of their normal curriculum, let's say, all right? And the idea is that if they're offered for credit, that those credits might be applied then to, you know, a larger degree, so that there's a pathway that we can create for students all the way from an associate's level through a PhD or doctoral level, and implementing these micro-credentials for certain skills and competencies that they need but may not be able to get in their normal curriculum. So it's an area that I see as very promising for St. John's. I think it's something that faculty seem to be very interested in. I've had, I don't know, over the past 2 weeks, I've had 3 different program directors and associate deans come to me to ask me about this. So this is something that I think, again, we want to pay attention to. Hybrid and low residency online graduate programs comes back to your comment before, Eric, about synchronous and asynchronous learning experiences. Being where we are in New York City is a wonderful, you know, competitive advantage in some ways. We've got a high population density. And of course, I think a lot of us know that most fully online students that are signing up for fully online programs are going within a 50-mile radius of where they actually live. They're not venturing far to get to an online institution. They're going to online institutions, you know, very close to home. So that's an advantage for us as well. But we've got this big, beautiful, sprawling campus, like you do, right? And we want to make sure that we're leveraging all of our assets in this way. So this notion of hybrid and low residency online programs is something that I think has started to take hold at St. John's as well. And we're certainly exploring how we can integrate a little bit more of the face-to-face or synchronous components into our fully online programs. And on the other end, how can we bring some additional online learning experiences to our residential students, which we're doing a better job of the latter, and we need to work a little bit more on the former. So these are some of the things that we're thinking about and looking at. How about you guys? Does any of that resonate with what's happening here?
We've been having discussions at the Simon School about the digital badges and micro-credentials.
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking about moving into that market.
The Simon School is which one?
Well, business school.
Sorry,
Sorry.
business school. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else?
What's the conversation like about the low residency? Are you talking about low residency master's programs or
Yeah.
low residency doctoral programs?
Both. Both.
In certain schools? What's low residency mean?
It means that there are required face-to-face components, but they are very, minimal. They're short in duration. So, for example, I had the good fortune to attend an event this semester with a brand new cohort of our online doctoral students for Homeland Security. So it was great because I very seldom get to meet with online students. It's just not what we do. But I was invited to this event. I said, I'm going to go. I want to meet some of these people. So I went, and I started talking to the brand new students in the cohort. It's a cohort-based program. They were required to come for a week-long intensive at the end of the summer before they started the fall semester. So that was a requirement. It was timed such that they could actually do it because these people all work full-time in the FBI, in the military. Some of them were deployed, but they could get there for that week, right? So that's a good example, I think, of one of these low residency. It's a fully online program in the regular semester. All the coursework is fully online in fall and spring. But they do have these occasional face-to-face experiences. That's what I mean by low res. Yeah. Anything else? And one of the reasons they came to the program, because I asked them about it, I said, you had other choices, right? Why'd you pick this one? And they said, because it's St. John's, and they were familiar with St. John's. St. John's has some brand recognition, especially in criminal justice, homeland security, and things like that. And because they had known people that had been to St. John's, maybe parents or other family members, and because of the format. The format was one of the most important things to them, because some of the other programs in that discipline were fully face-to-face or had very minimal online, and they just couldn't go. They just couldn't attend under those circumstances.
Yeah, in art, science, and engineering, we're about to embark on an analysis of that space in some of our more unique programs, optics, for example, where we've always been a hub for optics, but could we get more grad program attendance if we had partially online or professional degrees where they were mostly online, but maybe they would come here for experiments and things that they would do in optics. And we've certainly seen a huge growth in lecture capture. I mean, I looked at one, was it biochemistry? What was it? Chemistry. Like tens of thousands of hours of rewatched video in a single semester. It's kind of mind-blowing how many.
Well, when you've got a course like chemistry, like I've taken a few of those, a chemistry course, or it's very intensive. There's an awful lot of content that you need to pack into a course, and the opportunity to review a lecture, like that it's great. It really helps those students who are, trying to scribble it all down, but really, to go back and review in that way, I think is great. We didn't have that in my day. I wish we had.
For your micro-credentials and stackable credentials, you seem very attuned to who your student population is. Are those things that you're targeting your alumni, like people who've already had some bite size with you and you think that this is like a continued relationship, they get these added on?
Well, that's a great idea. We haven't actually, thank you. We haven't actually gotten that far in the discussion. This is a fairly preliminary kind of discussion at the institution. It's just something that we feel, that we have a future here and an idea that there is a market for this at various levels. Like I just met with an undergraduate dean yesterday who wanted to have a discussion about this. There's professional and continuing education types of offerings, and that's more in line with what you're talking about, and targeting alumni, people who have a connection to St. John's. So yeah, I think there are going to be different levels related to micro-credentials and digital badges, some of which will be more of like professional and continuing ed, non-credit in focus, and others that will be opportunities within the actual curriculum. You know, there are a lot of ways to do this, is my point, and we haven't landed on one specific direction yet.
In the medical school, we think a lot about how to do credentials that are combined with the PhD, or even can we make our MD curriculum 3 years and that 4th year be a different degree of what it is? Or is it workforce readiness? What does our workforce need as they change? Do they need something in bioinformatics? Do they need implementation science? Do they need these other things where an MD is not going to go back and do a full master's program, but what they need is something a little bit more than that weekend seminar.
Yeah.
And so is this some type of solution for that?
Right. I think that's a good train of thought. I'll be interested to see where you go with that.
Me too.
I know we're running out of time, but I think we have time for one or two more. Please.
Couple of questions,
Yes.
one from student perspective, one from faculty. So what is the average age of your students, and do you find it challenging to provide online programs as students are older? And the second question regarding faculty, do you find the requirement to have a certificate for online teaching a barrier for some faculty to actually provide that type of education?
So I'll start with your first two questions. The average age, I don't have these data at the top of my head, but I'm going to give you a pretty close informed guess. The undergraduate average age is young at St. John's. It's probably 22 or 23 on average. Graduate students, I think it's about 29. So we have a fairly young student population, okay? And a lot of them have been exposed to educational technology in their primary and secondary schools and things like that. So the technology is not a barrier for undergraduates. It's time management, it's discipline, it's focus, it's persistence. Those are the things that we grapple with, right, with the student side. What was the other part of that question? That's the question. Okay, so on the faculty side, is it a barrier that we require? This has been a requirement for so long that nobody ever really raises a fuss about it anymore. They know that this is the expectation and the requirement, and it's not the only pathway to certification. My unit offers a 4-week certification course. It's called Online Teaching Essentials. That's the bar that they have to pass, right? We also offer some other optional training after that. But nobody really balks at it, and the only thing that we have to make sure is that we can offer enough sections of it throughout the academic year to accommodate, you know, folks that are teaching for the first. If I'm teaching in class for the first time in the spring, I want to make sure I get that, you know, faculty member in the fall to do the required training. Some people come in and request a waiver based on previous experience and credentials, and I review those, and we do issue waivers as well based on prior experience. So I haven't found it to be a heavy lift at all. And I don't think the faculty do either, and it's a really good course. So I think they get a lot of value out of it. Yeah.
I'm curious if you have done any program evaluations, with students or faculties about how they actually perceive the learning experiences with this online program.
As a matter of fact, we have. This is an area where I feel we need to do better and we need to do more on student outcomes and feedback and satisfaction, and also faculty feedback as well. But on the student side, I will tell you that because we are a unionized faculty, the instrument that we use to do student course evaluations is collectively bargained. It's written into the faculty contract. We can't do anything but what's there. And I will tell you that the evaluations for the online courses are the same instrument, basically, as the one for the face-to-face courses. So there's some challenges with that, which I won't go into. But largely speaking, I've been looking at the trends over the last 5 years for online courses versus the face-to-face counterparts, because they're offered usually in both formats. No significant difference in outcomes or student satisfaction. No significant difference. The trend lines are almost exactly overlapping. So the feedback from students is good. And it's actually getting a little bit better in the last couple of years. And I would attribute that to the fact that we're getting better at delivering it and that we're offering more resources to support it. Faculty, there are different issues for faculty who are interested in dipping into online learning. They're often concerned about cannibalizing their face-to-face courses and programs. We have a number of faculty at St. John's who have been there for many, many years. And they're concerned about that. And they don't really see the pedagogical benefit or how it could be as good as or better than a face-to-face experience. So they hold that face-to-face experience as their gold standard, if you will. And there's another whole discussion we can have about that. So the faculty feedback is not really about having to train for it or how to do it so much as it is about what does this really mean for my engagement with my students? How do I achieve that in an online format? I don't see how I can possibly do that. And it's our job to help them see that path forward and to be able to deliver that. And I think once they do go through that experience, they take some of the strategies and tools that they've developed for their online learning back into their face-to-face course design and delivery, and they find that they're more satisfied with what they're doing face-to-face, having incorporated that. So it seems to have a lot of tangential benefits as well. It's not for everybody. And there are people who will never teach online at St. John's, and that's okay. But I find more and more, especially as new faculty are hired every year, that there is a willingness and even an expectation they're going to be teaching online at some point. I hope I answered your question. One last one?
I'm curious about whether you have any statistics or the following up evaluation or statistics to prove that which type of community students is most successful, the online degree, the students with online degree or students without the online degree. Which one is more accepted in the work market, or in other way, whether the totally online degree is accepted by the work market?
That's a great question, and I think it also has a relationship to the discipline that you're talking about, whether it's a business or healthcare or whatever it may be. I don't have those data on students who have graduated from St. John's programs. The curricula are identical. There is no indication on a student transcript or anything that it's been an online program versus a face-to-face program. An accounting degree is an accounting degree, end of story. Now, the perception of an online program out in the workforce is a different matter. I think in my personal opinion, there is growing acceptance of online degrees, especially when they are issued by accredited not-for-profit institutions like ours that have a good academic reputation. So I think there's more openness to that than there has been in years past. Would you agree with that, Eric? Yeah, so I think that it really depends on the discipline. I mean, I have heard stories. I'm not saying where, which institution, but I have heard stories of hiring committees saying, oh, online degree? No, not going to consider that candidate. I think it really depends on the discipline. Any other thoughts about that?
If it doesn't say it on the degree, why would you even put down that it was an online degree?
As far as we wouldn't even know that it was one or the other.
Because when I first came to the Simon School, I kept it pretty quiet that part of my graduate degree I completed online because I could hear some of our faculty make some pretty disparaging remarks about online education, so I thought, well, I'll just keep that under my hat. So I have an MS in accountancy, but I was like you could either do face-to-face or online, and I only did online when I had to solve a scheduling conflict.
Right.
So the vast majority of my degree was face-to-face, but occasionally, I got to teach class at that time, and that's when I got to take the online section, right?
Yeah.
But there is that kind of connotation that, if you did it online, it can't possibly be as good.
It can't possibly.
And I found very quickly that the online courses I thought were a little bit even more rigorous than a face-to-face.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think a lot of people are surprised, and a lot of our students at St. John's are surprised at the rigor and the quantity of work to be done in an online course. They're expecting it to be an easy ride, and it isn't. No, it isn't. And it shouldn't be. It should be of equal rigor, if not more, than a face-to-face course. Right. Why not? So yeah, that does come as a surprise to some folks. I know we're out of time, Eric, and I don't want to go too much longer. Are you sure? Okay, so as far as what's coming next at St. John's, I don't want to spend too much time here, but we're certainly looking at our unit, Online Learning and Services, is looking at partnering with other units in the organization to deliver some of these programs that I mentioned here. The Office of the Mission, okay, again, Catholic University, Vincentian, mission is a big deal, has come to us and asked us to help them put their orientation program for faculty and staff into an online format. And this is a really big lift because they do a lot of instruction in this area. So we said, okay, we'll help you. How could we say no, right? How could we say no? So we are working on that currently and helping them to design and develop online format for this orientation program. Academic integrity, we've developed a learning module for students at the undergraduate level. This is kind of a remediation. It's a learning module delivered in Blackboard to help to remediate and educate students about plagiarism and academic integrity and things like that. So when students get disciplined for that, this is something that they have to do in this particular academic unit. So that's been pretty fun and interesting. Diversity, equity, inclusion, big topic of conversation at our institution right now. And we are looking for ways to help our faculty to integrate these principles into the curriculum across the disciplines. So I'm sure we're going to be working with our DEI office at St. John's to help to design some online modules for that purpose. Accessible course design, ADA compliance, this is ongoing work, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. We developed a self-paced learning module, again, for faculty, self-enroll in Blackboard, to take them through accessibility issues in design and development. The online student orientation I mentioned earlier, the Blackboard Ultra transition, which is going to be a big deal to transition to a new format. And I'm also undertaking some research with one of our doctoral fellows this semester. I have a captive, and I said, you're going to help us with our research. We're looking at our student course evaluation data over the last 5 years, and also the outcomes of our OTE, 4-week required training. So some research going on in our department there. So these are some of the things that we're taking up. So with that, I'm way over my time, and I apologize for keeping you longer than you expected to be here. But again, thank you so much for coming. It's always a pleasure to meet other colleagues out in the field that are doing this kind of work or considering doing this kind of work, and to have a conversation with you. So thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you, Eric.